Okay, so today we're diving into something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and that's encouraging healthier eating habits within their family,
Hmm.
especially when, everybody's got different pace, everybody's got different needs, and sometimes it can feel like you're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we had a listener who is dealing with exactly this
Yeah.
with their sister and their mom, and we're going to kind of dig into what they've told us and see what we can find.
Yeah, so our listener has given us a really clear picture of what's going on in their household with food.
Hmm.
They're trying to support healthier choices,
Yeah.
but they have a sister who loves fast food.
Hmm.
So we're talking Costco hot dogs. We're talking pizza,
Yeah, classics.
the classics. And then on the other hand, you have mom who believes that her diet is already healthy, even though she enjoys, some less nutritious options. And then our listener also has to think about their own dietary restrictions. They have gluten intolerance, peanut and milk allergies,
Yeah.
and they need to manage their carbohydrate intake because of high triglycerides.
Yeah.
It's a lot to juggle, right?
It's a lot going on in one kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's break it down a little bit. I
Yeah.
think, we really see some sticking points here, and I think you hit the nail on the head. The sister loves that processed food, high fat, high sodium.
Right.
And it's quick. It's easy.
Easy.
And then on the other hand, mom's resistant to any change.
Mhm.
She enjoys the things that she enjoys.
Yes.
And there's also this possibility, and our listener brought this up, that there might be some memory issues that are kind of influencing,
Mhm.
how mom's actually eating on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And then on top of that, you've got the high cholesterol heart issues, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, and then the potential memory and hearing issues that you mentioned before.
Hmm.
So, all of those things really point to, needing to make some dietary changes.
Absolutely. I think it's so fascinating how all of these things kind of interweave.
Yeah.
It's not just individual preferences, it's habits that have been established over time.
Hmm.
It's also, potential health factors that could be influencing those habits.
Mhm.
And then this huge emotional component,
Yeah.
which, you mentioned that both your mother and your sister feel like you're being criticized or controlled when it comes to food.
Right.
And that is like such a huge hurdle to overcome, right?
Right.
So I think it's really important to kind of acknowledge that right off the bat.
Yeah. And you also mentioned something really interesting about, the potential health indicators that our listener has noticed with their sister, the loud talking,
Right.
the occasional memory slips.
Yeah.
And then with mom, obviously, the confirmed hearing loss and those memory concerns. And that could also influence how they're perceiving, discussions about food and how they're responding.
Perception is
Yeah.
everything, right?
Yeah, so this is, a really delicate situation where we need to be really careful
Yeah.
about how we approach this.
Mm-hmm.
So what we really want to do with this deep dive is try to give our listeners some actionable,
Right.
respectful strategies
Mhm.
that they can use in this situation to encourage healthier eating
Yeah.
in a way that takes everyone's preferences and sensitivities into account.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also important to note that, we want to be mindful of these potential underlying health issues
Absolutely.
as well.
Yeah.
We're not medical professionals, but it is something to consider.
Right. And it's about, kind of approaching this with that lens of, awareness and sensitivity.
Yeah, so we're looking for those aha moments for our listener,
Yes.
but we don't want to overwhelm them with information.
Exactly. It's about finding those nuggets that are going to really resonate and
Oh.
be applicable to their specific situation.
Right. Okay, so where do we even begin?
Okay. Well, I think a really good starting point and something that can really help reduce pushback is to think about making very small and gradual changes.
Okay.
Overhauling someone's entire way of eating overnight is rarely effective.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
It's less of a jolt to the system,
Exactly.
right? Instead of you can't eat this anymore, you can't eat that anymore. It's more like, okay, let's make, one or two adjustments
Exactly.
and kind of ease into things. Why is that more effective from a psychological standpoint?
Well, I think it allows people to adjust, right? And it doesn't trigger that same level of resistance that a sudden drastic shift often does.
Okay.
That gives people time to adapt their palates, their routines. Yeah, think of it like gently turning a large ship. Small course corrections over time will have a much greater impact than, yanking the wheel all at once.
I like that analogy.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, building that sense of accomplishment with each small step.
Exactly.
Yeah, the little wins.
Yeah, so then you don't get discouraged
Yeah.
right away. And it's not just about the food itself.
Yeah.
It's about the psychology behind it, right?
Right. And when you are introducing these changes,
Mm,
I think it's so important how you talk about it.
absolutely.
So instead of focusing on what they can't have,
Yes.
you're focusing on what they gain.
Exactly. What are the positive outcomes of making healthier choices?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's increased energy, maybe it's better sleep quality, or even just an improved mood.
Right. So for mom, it might not be you need to cut back on sugary snacks.
Right.
It might be,
Hmm.
hey, let's see if adding in a piece of fruit
Yes.
after lunch, helps with your energy levels in the afternoon.
Exactly. Or, maybe it's, instead of saying, those hot dogs are bad for you to your sister,
Right.
you could say, maybe having a salad with your pizza
Right.
will give you, more sustained energy for, your track practice or whatever it is that she's doing.
Yeah.
So making it personal and connecting it to how they might feel on a day-to-day basis
Yeah.
can make the idea of change a lot more appealing.
Right. And that's a good point. You make it personal.
Yes.
You involve them.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, you laying down the law about what everybody's eating. This is.
Exactly.
It's a family affair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned joint meal planning.
Yes.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Asking for their input on meals.
Yeah.
Maybe even looking through recipes together.
Absolutely.
And finding healthier ways to prepare,
Mm-hmm.
some of their favorite dishes.
And I think what's really interesting about that collaborative approach is that it fosters a sense of ownership.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, could you guys make homemade pizza together?
Yeah.
Use a whole wheat crust, load it with veggies, and maybe try a leaner protein source.
Right.
Or maybe you could experiment with healthier versions of those fast food favorites at home.
Right.
So they still get the flavors they enjoy, but with better ingredients,
It kind of transforms the conversation from, a lecture into a shared activity.
Right. And that's a good segue to your next point, which was, maybe grocery shopping together.
Mm-hmm.
If that's practical for your family,
Yeah.
it's a way to just kind of subtly,
Exactly.
non-confrontationally
Yes.
start looking at food labels and pointing out, healthier options.
And it's all about, if we connect it back to the bigger picture, it's about giving them a sense of control and agency.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that directly counters those feelings of being criticized or controlled that you mentioned.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh,
So
okay.
it's like shifting the dynamic from you being the food police
Right.
to, everyone being part of a team.
We're in this together.
Yeah, we're all in this together working towards better health,
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And then another thing that you talked about was, this whole idea of adding things in instead of taking things away. It feels less restrictive.
It does.
It feels less like punishment.
Right. It's about, abundance and nourishment, not deprivation.
I like that.
So encourage them to incorporate more fruits, vegetables, whole grains into their existing eating habits.
So for the sister,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's instead of, taking away the pizza, it's like, hey, let's add a side of steamed broccoli
Exactly.
or a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
Or for mom,
Mhm.
maybe it's a small salad or a
Right.
serving of green beans
Oops.
alongside her regular meals.
Just those little additions can make such a big difference over time.
Yeah, and you were talking about smart swaps.
Yes.
So this is like, we're not taking away pizza,
Mm-hmm.
we're not taking away hot dogs,
Right.
but we're exploring ways to make them a little bit
Healthier.
more nutritious.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, for pizza,
Yeah.
could you use a whole wheat crust? Could you pack in a ton of different vegetables? Could you maybe opt for a leaner protein source like grilled chicken or turkey instead of pepperoni?
Mhm.
And, maybe go a little bit lighter on the cheese.
Yeah.
For hot dogs, if they're open to it, there are lower sodium and lower fat options available. And then pairing them with whole wheat buns and a generous serving of vegetables on the side can make a really big difference.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Mexican food and pasta as well.
Yeah.
And similar principles apply there.
Right.
Choosing lean meats,
Yeah.
incorporating more beans and vegetables,
Right.
using whole grain tortillas or pasta, and be mindful of, things like cheese and sour cream portions.
Right. So what are some things that maybe aren't so obvious
Mm-hmm.
that we could swap out that would make a big difference?
Oh, that's a good question.
But, without sacrificing flavor.
Right. Well, I think one thing with pizzas, you could try using nutritional yeast to give it that cheesy flavor without,
all the cheese.
all the cheese.
Yeah.
Nutritional yeast has this naturally cheesy, nutty flavor.
Right. And it's much lower in fat and calories than traditional cheese. So it's a really smart way to get that satisfying taste without, the same nutritional drawbacks.
Yeah, and it has some nutritional benefits.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a win-win.
Yeah.
Another example might be using mashed cauliflower to thicken sauces instead of cream.
Oh, interesting.
Or, swapping refined grains for things like quinoa or farro and salads
Hmm.
to boost fiber and protein.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, Mom made this comment about her diet not being Mediterranean,
Right?
which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it shows that sometimes people have a very specific
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps limited
Right.
idea of what healthy eating actually means.
Yes, and I think this brings up an important point about education and broadening perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Your response to that comment could be to gently clarify that healthy eating isn't limited to one specific dietary pattern.
Right.
Right. The underlying principles are about consuming more whole, unprocessed foods. Yeah.
Getting a good balance of nutrients, being mindful of portion sizes,
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the cuisine.
Right.
It's about, the core nutritional components, not necessarily adhering to a specific regional style of eating.
And I think going back to that emotional aspect that we talked about,
Yeah,
you really highlighted the importance of acknowledging their feelings.
absolutely.
Letting them know that you understand,
Mm-hmm.
that they might feel like you're being critical
Right.
or trying to control what they eat.
And this is crucial for building trust and open communication.
Mm-hmm.
So reassure them that your concern comes from a place of love and a genuine desire for everyone to be healthy and happy.
Right.
Phrases like, I know you both have your favorite foods, and I'm not trying to take those away.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we could find some ways to add in some more healthy options that we can all enjoy together.
I love that.
Those kinds of statements can be really effective in lowering defensiveness and creating a more collaborative atmosphere.
And then also leading by example, I think, is a really powerful,
Absolutely.
even if sometimes subtle,
Yeah.
way to encourage change.
Actions speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm.
So if they see you making healthy choices that also accommodate your own dietary needs,
Right.
it can be a lot more influential than just telling them what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So when they see you enjoying meals that cater to your gluten intolerance and your allergies while still being delicious and satisfying, it can naturally spark their curiosity and maybe even inspire them to try new things.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And, focusing on just one meal at a time also feels
Right.
much less overwhelming,
Mhm.
So instead of,
Give you steps.
instead of trying to tackle,
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner all at once,
Yeah.
maybe just start with, okay, let's focus on making, dinner
Mm.
a little bit healthier and see how that goes.
Exactly. And it allows everyone to adjust gradually.
Right.
And experience any potential benefits
Mm-hmm.
without feeling, bombarded by change.
Yeah, I like that. And then, if mom's resistance is really continuing,
Mm-hmm.
especially with her, current health conditions,
Right.
you suggested the possibility of, involving a registered dietitian
Yeah.
or a nutritionist,
Absolutely.
ideally with her doctor's input.
And I think what's valuable about that is that sometimes hearing that same advice from a healthcare expert can carry more weight.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So you can frame it as, we want to get the best possible advice for the whole family's well-being.
Right.
Not just singling her out.
We're all going to learn.
Yeah, it becomes like a collective effort
Yeah, I like that.
to learn more about healthy eating from a trusted source.
Okay. And then we really need to talk about these potential hearing and memory issues.
Yeah.
That you've pointed out with both your mom and your sister.
Absolutely.
Because that could definitely play into, their understanding of and willingness to make dietary changes.
For sure.
So for mom, with her, diagnosed hearing loss
Mm-hmm.
and memory concerns patience, and clear communication
Are key.
are so important.
Yes.
You might need to, repeat information calmly.
Right.
Maybe even write down simple meal plans
Mm-hmm.
or, ideas for healthy snacks.
Yeah.
Really making sure that you have her full attention
Yeah. Got
before you start talking about food,
Absolutely.
speaking clearly.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things are going to be so important.
And, if we connect it back to the strategies,
Mm-hmm.
if they can clearly hear and easily recall
Right.
the benefits of healthy eating
Yeah.
and the specific changes that are being suggested, they're much more likely to be receptive
Right.
and participate.
Yeah.
So addressing those communication barriers is a really important part of the overall approach.
Yeah. And for your sister, gently recommending a hearing check, framing it as making sure she's not missing out on conversations.
Yeah.
She's not having to strain to hear.
Right.
And if memory is also a concern, suggesting a doctor's visit to rule out any underlying issues could be a helpful step as well.
Absolutely.
Because again, all of these things can indirectly affect their ability to understand and remember the reasons for making healthier choices.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
And finally, you emphasize the importance of being patient and persistent.
Absolutely.
This is not a quick fix.
It's a journey.
Right.
Not a destination.
There are going to be ups and downs along the way.
Exactly.
So don't get discouraged by occasional setbacks. Keep offering those healthy options.
Yes.
Keep having those open and respectful conversations.
Yeah.
And, be sure to acknowledge and celebrate those small steps forward.
Absolutely.
And you gave some really great examples of flexible meal ideas. So this is the idea that, you have healthy core components, but you're offering lots of options for customization.
Yes.
So that everyone's preferences and needs can be met.
Exactly.
Including, your own dietary restrictions.
So things like, oatmeal with a variety of toppings for breakfast.
Yeah.
Big salads or sandwiches with lean protein and lots of veggies for lunch. Baked or grilled protein with roasted vegetables for dinner.
Yeah.
These are all, kind of like blank canvases that you can then customize to individual tastes.
I like that.
So your sister might want, a sprinkle of cheese on her scrambled eggs or a side of leaner sausage.
Yeah.
Your mom might prefer, a small serving of rice with her baked fish. So by providing those options, you're accommodating individual tastes while still focusing on nutritious core ingredients.
Right.
And then having, healthy snacks on hand, like fruits, vegetables with hummus.
Right.
Being mindful of any allergies. Nuts.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things can make a big difference in those in-between meal cravings.
Yeah. So to really bring home the central message of this deep dive, it's about approaching this with empathy.
Yes.
With a lot of patience. And really focusing on making those small, positive, and inclusive changes.
Absolutely.
By involving your mother and sister in the process, respecting their preferences as much as possible, and gently guiding them towards healthier options.
Yeah.
You really increase the chances of success.
I love that.
And it's so important to remember to consider any underlying health issues.
Absolutely.
That might be influencing, their eating habits or their ability to understand and remember information.
Could not have said it better myself.
And for you, our listener, here's a final point to really consider.
Okay.
What is that one small change that you genuinely believe might be the most easily accepted by your family right now?
All right.
Maybe it's adding a specific type of fruit
to the grocery list.
Yeah.
Or trying one new, healthier recipe together.
Exactly.
Start with that single step.
Yeah.
That one manageable step.
That one thing.
And observe what happens. What new conversations or understandings might emerge from that initial gentle move.
It's all about those ripples. Creating those positive ripples.
Toward healthier eating as a family.
Exactly.
Oh,
I hope that helps.